Now I've got to backtrack, I'm afraid, Jane, because I missed a bit out. When I was 7 years old, I was 7 in May, and we were looking forward very much, well, rather I was, to becoming, to going to big school. Now, big school in those days was the year equivalent, year one nowadays. And I was going to be in Mrs. Underhill's class, for which I was very happy, because the next class was Mr. Price. And Mr. Price was very nice, and people used to tell me that when it was fun time, he used to juggle his false teeth. And I wanted to go for that reason, but I was really happy to be going to Mrs. Underhill. Anyway, the time came for the big holiday, which was the 6 weeks, and we were going hop picking. And I was very excited about this going hop picking. It sounded good fun. Many people came from the East End of London, and they were really funny. And I always thought they spoke funny, and they were lovely. But anyway, this is what I was told. I've not experienced it at that stage. Excuse me. And time came, July came, and I remember not feeling very well the first week of the school holiday. I wasn't feeling very well at all. And Mum took me to see the doctor, and the doctor was called Dr. O'Connor. See her now, lovely lady. And she said to Mum, she's got to go into hospital. I had no idea why I had to go into hospital. But it turns out I had meningitis. And I went into the hospital, and the indignity of me going to hospital was not just feeling poorly, but I had to go in a baby cot into a ward of several other children who were all in cots. And it's awful. We could have no visitors, but my granny and my mum used to come up and look through a little square door. And Granny would knock on the door, and you always knew it was Granny because she wore a pork pie hat, and she was taller than my mum. And Mum, you could only see this little bit of Mum, unless she said somebody gave her a box to stand on, and then I could see her face. But they weren't allowed in, and this was awful. And the separation was horrible, really horrible, I can remember. But Granny and Mum came. Well, it seemed a long time between visits, but I'm sure it wasn't as long as he sent to me. Anyway, eventually, after many weeks and feeling quite poorly, awful headaches, and sometimes I couldn't even sit up. I remember it so well. And eventually we were taken out of, two of us were taken out of this ward, and we were pushed in what was then known as bath chairs. And we were pushed to another ward where there was a lady there who we were looking, I could see myself looking through these books, delighted to see a book. But these books weren't allowed to come back in the ward. They had to be only in that room. And we stayed there with this lady for a little while, both of us. And when we got back, the boys in the ward wanted to know where we'd been. And I remember so well. One of the boys was, well, two of them actually were very posh. And they went to better schools than we did. And the school was called Simon Lantern, where my cousins, Tony and Keith, were also. And that was a paid, a paid school. You had to pay to go there, but they didn't go to a council school like us. And these two posh boys wanted to know where we'd been because they'd never been out the ward. And we said, well, we'd been down to this room, described the room and what we did. And we said, oh, Joe, we didn't go there. We don't want to go to school. It's okay. We had a good laugh. And then I came out of hospital. It seemed forever. And I don't know how many weeks it was, but it seemed forever. And went back home, thinking I'd be now able to go back to school because the school had started. Back to school, so it was September, obviously. And because August had gone, Mum's birthday had gone. I know it was August the 11th, and her birthday had gone, so I'd seemed to have been in ages. But I wasn't allowed to go to school, even when I got back home. And Granny used to come every day. It was a fair way for her to walk, bless her. And she would sit and we would read and thread beads and do all sorts of things when Granny was there. Because my sister, Auntie Irene, still needed a lot of attention. And anyway, I got better and went back to school, which I was thrilled about, into Mrs. Underhill's class, and it was heaven. But still, poor old Ivan was struggling, and I still was in the playground, holding his hands through the railings at this time, and it was so sad, so sad. Anyway, Mrs. Underhill was very good with a needle, and she taught us to sew, which was another asset, and darn. And we used to take our socks in, a sock, and she had this mushroom, and it was turn. We had to take it in turns to have the mushroom because there was only one, and it was great fun darning a sock. I learned to darn really well, I have to say. And Mum didn't like sewing at all. So when Dad came home from India the second time, he had lots of holes in his socks. Big, thick socks they were, I remember. And I was hours weaving this darning stitch to do my dad's socks. And I remember him being ever so proud. But my dad at this time, he did look a funny colour, I recall. He was quite yellow. I never thought any more about it. I thought it was living in India, that's the colour you went. But it turns out that Dad had been quite poorly and was on what was known then as compassionate leave. And I knew we had to be very quiet when we got home from school because Dad was resting. Eventually, all things get back to normal again, and Dad goes back into the army, or back to his regiment, really. But then all of a sudden he came home very quickly, and he was very, very poorly. And he went then into an army hospital for a while. I still didn't know what was wrong with him, but it turned out to be some kind of kidney problem. Now he came back from India very, very thin, very yellow. And I heard Mum say one day, it didn't mean a thing to me at the time, I think he's got TB. Well, TB didn't mean anything to me. And I said to Mum, what does TB mean? She said, you're always asking questions. It's always why. Daddy's poorly. No, not poorly, she used to say, Daddy's very ill. Which was quite frightening. Anyway, he was in hospital for a while. And my sister was still having to go to the hospital, Auntie Irene. And it was a pantomime, real pantomime. But eventually, Dad got better, thank goodness, and all was calm again. and then he had to go back to his regiment. War now was very imminent. We used to hear my granddad used to say, it'll be here soon. We used to wonder what would be here soon. And I'm always asking questions. And my mum used to say, because I told you so. Well, why do I have to? Because I told you so. Never an explanation as to anything, which was infuriating. Anyway, Granny said one day to me, Pauline, don't keep asking your mum questions about your dad. Why, says I. And she said, because Daddy is poorly, but he's going to be all right. He's not, because I thought he was going to die. He's not going to die, but he's very poorly. And he's now in the soldiers' hospital. When, of course, I wanted to know, where's the soldiers' hospital? No idea. And apparently he had to go back to Aldershot, which could have been the other end of the earth to me. But we never taken to see him for many reasons, I suppose. There was no money for train fares or bus fares or anything like that, so we couldn't go. I had to wait for him to come home again. And this was, it was going on forever. In my mind, it maybe wasn't as long as I imagined, but it was awful. Anyway, he came home, but then he came home for a long time and he didn't wear his uniform. You'd think, why wasn't Dad in his uniform now? But of course he wasn't well enough, obviously, to go back. And he started doing little jobs around the house. But I know whatever job he did was never good enough for Mum. Never. There was always something wrong. And I remember him decorating, papering a wall one day, and oh gosh, it was murder. Mum was saying, it's upside down with big patterns. I can see this wallpaper now. And Dad said it's going to stay upside down if that's what it is. It's going to stay like it. I'm not doing it anymore. Anyway, this paper lasted for a very long time, upside down wallpaper, and it really got on Mum's nerves. I remember this. Oh, this wallpaper. Oh, she's not going on about the wallpaper again. Until in the end, my granny said, let's take it off, Lil. My mum's name was Ruth, and I could never understand why she was called Lil, but it was obviously what she was called when she was a kid. And so together, Granny and my mum took this wallpaper down, and then it was distempered. Well, now it's all white. It looked like a hospital wall. Dad hated it. Oh dear, this went on for what seemed like weeks. And anyway, the paper came off and new paper was put on now, but done by my mum and Granny. So it was very smart. I remember it, very smart. Dad never